مستشارنا المهندس أنس بن عبد الله الزيد، الحاصل على درجة البكالوريوس في الهندسة الكهربائية من جامعة الملك فهد بترول معادن، ماجستير إدارة الأعمال من جامعة الملك سعود. طبعا منذ بدء سباهي وهو معنا، والحمد لله طوال هذه السنين كان سبورتيف جدا لجميع برامج السباهي، سواء من تطوير معايير أو حتى الزيارات، ونعتمد عليه اعتماد كبير بعد الله سبحانه وتعالى. طبعا شغل 30 سنة من الخبرة أو ما يزيد على ذلك في مجال السلامة، وحاليا هو مدير منطقة الشرق الأوسط شمال أفريقيا الهيئة الوطنية الأمريكية للوقاية من الحرائق المعروفة بال NFPA. عمل قبل ذلك مدير عام الأمن والسلامة بوزارة الصحة لفترة، وهو عضو اللجنة الفنية لتطوير المعايير معنا في السباهي، ومقيم في شابتر FMS، محكم معتمد من وزارة العدل، ومحاضر بجامعة الملك سعود بدبلوم السلامة. ويعني أنا يمكن أكون بايس لأني أنا جدا جدا أحترم المهندس أنس، ومن الناس اللي أنا أقتدي فيهم سواء على المستوى الشخصي أو حتى في مجال الأعمال. فحياك الله يا باشمهندس، وتفضل معنا.
الله يجزاك خير ويبارك فيك، وشكرا على المقدمة. طبعا ال FMS مثل ما قال محمد واحد من أصعب يعني الشباتر حقت مو فقط الامبلاتوري، بكل الأقسام. أول شيء بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. المحاضرة طبعا حتتكون من الستاندرز المعايير نفسها، وبعدين ناخذ تفصيل كل واحد فيها. المشكلة الأساسية الآن في شرحها إنه عندك محمد؟
واضح الشاشة طبعا.
طبعا اول شيء نتكلم ما هو الاف ام اس. الاف ام اس اللي هو فاسيلتي مانجمنت اند سيفتي. فاسيلتي مانجمنت اللي هي اداره المرافق. It's basically the facility management of all the buildings and the services. محمد ما ادري تبي نتكلم عربي او انجليزي؟ نخليه بيورلي.
هو مالتي، لانه عارف التخصص ده فيه من العرب وفيه من الاجانب، يعني نحاول نكون ما بين ان شاء الله.
طيب. So FMS Facility Management and Safety is basically تتكون أو consists of four main fields. Engineering, it's all to do with the building itself, the physical facility of the building. Then we have the safety, which is the fire prevention and the general safety of the building, the people inside it. Then we have the security, الأمن. So this is also under FMS. Plus is the bioengineering, which to do with all the medical equipment. So all of these under. Now also in my today presentation, I'm going to cover also the radiology services and at the end of this presentation. So basically I have the FMS and the radiology services at the end. So I'm trying to cover all of them. But the main thing here is you need to understand when you say FMS, لما نتكلم عن FMS, we are talking about four fields: engineering, safety, security, and bioengineering. Now, if you نمر على المعايير and go through the standards, you can think, okay, is this engineering, safety, security, bioengineering, or medical engineering, and which one is addressing? But the most important thing to understand, and this is, by the way, I think this is the basic failure or success factor in all the cases. You need to understand, okay, why the standard is there. So we are Sibahi. This is a Sibahi standard. Sibahi standard looks for two things: safety and quality. So the first question, the most issue I found in all the hospitals through my journey and hospitals and the centers, primary healthcare or military, is they try to implement the standard before they think why the standard is there. What's the standard trying to protect? What's the dangerous or hazards this standard? The standard was put by CBAHI for a reason. So the first question after you read the standard, why the standard is there and why it's trying to help and what's the dangerous or the hazard it's trying to prevent. So that's the main success factor. I noticed through my years of experience, many people try to implement the standard before they understand why it's there. You need to understand why it's there and what's trying to prevent from a dangerous or safety issue. So if you understand the requirement of it, that's the essence of it. And then we can move forward on it. So in the ambulatory care centers standards, we have 9, total of 9. Out of them, there is a substandards of 52. So today we are going to cover 9 standards, plus 3 standards, and the 3 standards for the radiology services. Also, I'm going to cover it. Yes, radiology is, if we do an FMS survey, but in your case, it doesn't have FMS, also covered by FMS usually people. Now, FMS 1, we'll start with. Now I will give you the standard itself, then I will try to explain what's the standard's requirement and what does it need for it. So the standard said the leaders establish and support facility management and safety program. So let's go back to the first question. Why the standard is here? So the standard is here, he's saying, the wording is the leader establish, support and facility management and safety program. But the essence of the standard said, we want to see that the ambulatory care management, the big bosses, are looking for the FMS, they understand it, and they support it. So here we want to see, to establish that the leaders, they do support it and they put the money and the staff, and it is one of their priorities. So that's why I want to see. So that's big, because we believe if the management does not support FMS and they try to cut costs, you will have a failure in your center. So the first substandard, a qualified individual is responsible for the facility management and safety program as a full-time or part-time employee. So this is now, because now, is it part-time or full-time? Which one I should put in my center? Now all back to the size of your center, okay? If your center is too small and you don't think it's doesn't need a dedicated engineer or technicians to look after the FMS, then it could be a part-time, it could be the lab technician, could be any person, one of the admins to look after the FMS. But the main thing here we want to know إنه لازم يكون في شخص مسؤول عن FMS. We don't want somebody, everybody is throwing it on the other bit. No, we want the FMS, somebody to be responsible for it. So that's the main requirement for it. And then in my following slide, I will tell you what are we looking from a leadership and the management of it. Second one, the leaders establish interdisciplinary team for overseeing and monitoring facility management and safety program. If I appoint somebody responsible for the FMS, does not mean everything is in his shoulders. No, it have to be a teamwork. You have everybody to contribute. We put somebody responsible to look after it, but the execution have to be interdisciplinary. Means from all departments they have to contribute and chip on to make sure the program is successful and to prevent any accident or incident. The safety management program includes plans for emergency management, utility management systems, hazardous material, fire safety, medical equipment, building safety and security. Now I will show you a slide after that. It will explain directly what are we talking about in this standard. The safety management program includes regular inspection, testing, maintenance of all programs operating components. Many people usually ask, what do we mean by safety program or safety management program? What we are asking is, there is 7 components of the safety, that's directly with the FMS, 7 plans, okay, which is mentioned in this one, which is the emergency management, okay, then we have the utility systems, then we have the hazardous material, fire safety, medical equipment, and building safety and security. Building safety and security, there are 2. So all of these, there's 7 plans, they have to be, and there's one program to all include them together under one umbrella. The safety management program includes, now, after you do the program, you need to make sure the program is working. It's not only about, I have a program, it's written, it's well written and documented. No, we need to make sure, we want to see that whatever you are doing in the program is being executed on the ground. So that's a very important issue. Data related to safety and concerns are reviewed and analyzed with the proper action to prevent reoccurrence. And this is, by the way, very important. You need to document. Why do we need to document? We need to document for 2 reasons. First, if we need to go back and check what happened on that incident or something. And the second one, we need to analyze. If I did a maintenance on for example, air conditioning or examination light or whatever, or autoclave, if I do a maintenance and then I found out there are some issues with it, I need to trace it to find that there is a reason for it. The quality of the water, power fluctuation, there's many issues related to the equipment. That's why we need to document it. Again, the leaders maintain and complete the documentation of the facility management. So that's now also emphasize that the leaders, they need to keep it. It's not about leaving it to the in charge. No, the leader should also follow on it. And 1.7, the staff, including new hires, local and trainees, receive education program, the education repeated annually and relevant to their practice. I will show you what do we mean by training on it. So the first question now is, what's the management roles in FMS and what do they need? And how do we show their commitment to safety? So we have the 10 pillars of management, and okay. So we have, first of all, planning. Everything is based on planning. The healthcare and all the business should be well planned. If you have planning, and this is we try to stress in the FMS, the more planning you do, the less accident, and you will show that on a few slides later. Organization, you have to have a proper organization and chain of command and documentation and escalation, all of it under organization. Budget allocation. Now I am talking about what's the requirement from the ambulatory center management. This is the top level. What are we looking? We are looking for 10 roles. Okay, we need to see they do planning, they do organization. There is a proper organization. It's not haphazard. Everybody doing whatever he does. We need to know everybody is responsible on something. And if that guy is not there or that lady is not there, somebody is covering it up. So that's the organization. The budget allocation, there is a money being spent on the physical and the safety of the center. Building culture, that's very important. If the people, they know to talk and they can discuss what the problems, that's also important. Continuous training, it's not about we give them one-time training, no, it's a continuous training, new and refreshing. The new equipment, on the refreshing, all of that is important. Safe infrastructure. If you know there is a problem in the electrical above the ceiling or the piping or all of that, that's all need to be addressed. And oversight, means somebody is looking and monitoring on it. Motivation, you need to motivate people positively to make sure they adhere to the safety regulation, fire prevention, and all of that. Qualified workforce, and this is very important. You need to appoint the right people. That's a role of the management. And last is communication. Communication is vital to have a safe center and building a proper culture. So these 10 are requirements from management. Now the second one is about training. Now let's go now, FMS responsibility. Depends on the size you have. So what's if the guy is responsible on the FMS, what are we looking for? Now, first thing we look for the size. If it's a small center, we can accept part-time, but if it's big center, we need to have a dedicated or a full-time FMS responsible for it. A qualification, again, depends on, but we need somebody qualified at least, or knows what we are talking about, and he can relate. Now, from today's presentation, you will see there's a lot of technical, engineering, maintenance, safety, fire prevention issues. He needs to get grasp of it. It's not about something he needs to know about and he understands what's happening. He has to have some experience on it. He has to be trained, full-time or part-time. This depends on the size, of course, and the complication of the center itself. Okay. Now, the last issue is positive and resistance. I always say, if you are working in the FMS, especially on safety, you need to be positive. You don't let people, you ask 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, until you make sure everybody is safe. And resistance. What do we mean resistance? Is you don't lose hope. You continue on it. You ask 1 time, 2 times, 2, 3 times. So always please, this is a good character of FMS responsible gentleman or lady. Now let's go back to the 7 plans. This is the pillars. They call them the pillars of FMS. The facility safety, that's the general safety of the building, like the ramps, the staircases, the doors, the height, the guards, all of that under the facility safety. Security, to protect the people, and we'll come that, we have a few slides about it. Life and fire safety, fire prevention and life evacuation is all important, and we need to monitor. Emergency preparedness plans, you need to have a plans, internal and external, how to react if something happens, you have an influx of patient, or you have something in your center, how you want to deal with the patient. Hazardous material and waste disposal, that's a very important in healthcare. You need to make sure there is a proper channels of collecting and disposing of all the hazardous material and waste disposal. And medical equipment. Medical equipment is very important. That's the main diagnosis. We will come to that in each one. And the last one is the utility, the air conditioning, the water, the power, all that comes under the utilities. Now, please, I will leave, just for your information, the last 10 minutes, I will make it for the question and answer session. So if you have questions, please just write them down. I will leave 10 minutes on the end if anybody wants to have a question. Sorry, I should mention that in the beginning, but I will leave 10 minutes, the last 10 minutes for the question and answer to try to answer it for you. So we need 7 plans. These 7 plans for your center, you need 7 plans. How do I write the plans? We always say they need to be smart plans. What do we mean smart? It means specific. It doesn't have to be general, specific. We want to do that on this plan and have to be qualified. We need to improve, for example, the maintenance, we need to improve the security, and you need to be very specific on that. The plans need to be measurable. It doesn't have to be general, we need to have measurable. So we for example, if there is an incident or something, you need to measure how many incidents you have, smoking people coming without the mask, things like that. So all of that you need to be measurable, and you need to start working on plans to improve it and bring down all unwanted actions or behaviors. Then you have achievable. You have to be realistic. That's mean achievable, mean realistic when you set your goals. Okay, and again, achievable and realistic. Sometimes you put yourself in a situation in the plans and you cannot achieve it because they are not really realistic. And time bound. You need to have the plans. I want to achieve something in a certain time. Okay, I want to go to Saudi Arabia. I want to work for 5 years. I want to make $100,000, for example. So I have 5 years and I have 5. So I have the objective of I want to work in Saudi Arabia for 5 years, if you are expat, and I want to achieve 100,000 in these 5 years, for example. So basically you have the time bound and your objective of the plan. That's what we will talk about SMART. Now, if you go back to the FMS 1, he talks about training. And now training, and this is very important, we want to see it in when you visit your center, we need to see 3 types of training. The individual training, okay, and that's basically what is the capability and skill of the individual itself, how to use the fire extinguisher, how to, for example, for non-FMS CPR, for example. So this is individual for the person himself. You need to give him a training on individual. Then we have team training. When we do team training, if you have, for example, ER or certain clinics, we need to make sure if there is something that happened, physical assault or anything, the team works together to prevent it and to work again. Or if you have a fire or something, we need to make sure the team works together. And then the third level, we want to see the whole center, the whole staff. How do they work if there's something major happening to them? So when we see training, we need to see 3 types of training. The personal individual training for each one of them, is he trained, for example, to use the extinguisher, how to call and things like that, and how to use the medical equipment. That's a very important issue. Then we need to see team training within the same unit, if there is a unit on the center, how do they deal to each other, if there is any issue, how they work together. And the third training, we need to see the whole center if there's a major thing. So 3 types of training, always keep in your mind, we want to see to make sure the safety of the patients going to your center. Now we go to the FMS2. Again, I'd like to stress again, FMS is not about the FMS officer, it's about teamwork. And so we have interdisciplinary rounds are scheduled and conducted to ensure safety. The interdisciplinary team conducts a facility inspection round at least 4 times per year. So what he's asking here, the standard, is you have to have 3, 4, or 5 from the interdisciplinary team goes around the center and try to identify all shortfalls and defects on the center. And this is, believe it or not, very effective because usually people, when he work in a clinic or in a place, after sometimes he gets used to the things wrong. We don't want that. We want other people to come and try to find out a cable running on the floor, something sharp left on the tables, or maybe sometimes for the patient itself. Don't forget, we are patient-centric. So always when you do a round, you need to see it from a patient perspective. Is that going to affect the patient? Is it dangerous to the patient? And all types of patients, all people, kids, babies, all of them, we need to think about them when we do these rounds. FMS 2.2, the resulting information is documented, used for corrective action, planning, and budgeting for long-term facility upgrading and replacement. Now, when you do the tours, the rounds, you need to document it, and then you have to put an action plan for it. It's not only you identified it. We want to make sure, now when Sibahi wants to make sure, you do the inspection, the interdisciplinary inspection rounds, you identify the defects, shortfalls, anything, you documented them, and then you put a plan on resolving them. So this is how we improve the healthcare services in the centers and all of it. We go, we monitor, we find, and we try to resolve it. That's basically BCDA, so that's the main issue. Interdisciplinary teams, who and why, they have to be overseeing and monitoring. That's the main inspection, testing, and maintenance to make sure that the maintenance is done on the right way. And review and analyze this is the basic job of the interdisciplinary team. It could be from nursing, administration, lab, medical, all of these. It depends on the size, again, of the center. They can be interdisciplinary, all of them, so they can discuss together. We need to see that they are sitting together, they're discussing it. People will sometimes lose, everybody works alone in his job. No, we need to make sure that they are communicating and they're identifying issues, and the issues are raised to the management. Documentation, that's what I was talking about. FMS 3, the center's environment is safe for patients, visitors, and staff. Now, that's basically what Sibahi is doing, is you want to make sure that the environment is safe for patients, visitors, and staff. So how do we achieve that? Again, please, I would like to stress it one more time. Whenever you read a standard, FMS or any other standard on Sibahi codes and standards, the first thing is you need to ask yourself why the standard is there. Why Sibahi has put that standard? What are they looking? What are they looking to prevent or improve? Which kind of accident or confusion or miscommunication they try to prevent? So that's the main question. If you understand why the code or the standard is there, then you will, I'm sure you will approach the standard to resolve it or to comply with it in the right way. If you go just read it and try to implement it without thinking why it's there, you will always have an issue of proper implementation. So 3.1 says the leaders ensure that the building and its services comply with the national standards, environmental protection standard, laws and regulation, and the recommendation of professional centers. So what you're saying is we need to see your center is complying with Saudi Arabia codes and standards, international. Any action you are doing in your center needs to be in the right compliance with the Saudi law, Saudi requirement, codes and standards, and all of that. I will have another slide for you after this, which show you which is the agencies we usually focus in the FMS ones. The building and surrounding are hazards free. So, and notice, and its surrounding. It's not about, well, my building is doing well. No, and we need also to make sure that the access of the patients, visitors, and staff, when you go to your center, even the access, its surrounding is safe. So please focus on your building, on your place, and the surrounding, the access to it, and any dangers could result on that. A periodic preventive maintenance, a planned or periodic preventive maintenance, PPM, and corrective maintenance are performed and recorded critically on all critical and mechanical systems. We need to have a PPM system. So what is a PPM? I will show you on the slide. Maintenance records are kept for electrical and mechanical system, including periodical preventive maintenance. The centers has adequate parking space, waiting areas. So what are we talking about here on FMS 3? Now, first one we were talking about the codes and standards. So the basic Saudi now, and from 1st of Muharram 1440, the Saudi Arabia has adopted the Saudi Building Code, which is, I think, one of our major achievements in Saudi Arabia. And 1st of Muharram 1440, all buildings has to be, and especially healthcare. Healthcare buildings and centers, by the way, one of the most dangerous type of building, more dangerous than chemical plant, more dangerous than nuclear plant, not because of the material, but because of the interaction between these centers and the community. These centers are middle of the community, and they have high hazards from infection, from FMS, from all of the medical gases, radiology, all of that are adding to the dangers of the building. So Saudi Building Code specifies the requirement. And if you go back now, down is the NFPA, National Fire Protection, all chapter 802, we have chapter 8 in the Saudi Building Code, is built on the NFPA. NFPA is the agency, the association I'm working with now, الجمعية الأمريكية لمكافحة الحرائق، الوقاية من الحرائق, NFPA. It's the source of standards, not to all Sibahi, it's the standard source of the Saudi Building Code of all buildings, not only healthcare. Healthcare, education, industrial, residential, commercial, all of them follow the Saudi Building Code and came from the NFPA, which I work with. Also, you are required to follow the other agencies' requirements. One of them is Ministry of Health. This is a regulatory body in Saudi Arabia for the healthcare sector. So anything issue from MOH, you're supposed to follow and adhere to it. We have also Ministry of Human Resource, طبعا كان وزارة العمل and صارت Human Resource and Social Development. For example, they have now the new procedure, policy and procedure for the occupational OSHA, occupational safety and health requirement. So you need to adhere to it also. Then we have the civil defense now. Also civil defense, before 1st of Muharram 1440, civil defense regulation to the building was mandatory. Now it's not mandatory, it's Saudi building code is mandatory. However, the civil defense is the something we call authority having jurisdiction, ASJ. ASJ means anything in the code regarding fire prevention, okay, and ASG, which is civil defense, is responsible to comply and interpret it even. Then we have the Saudi Food and Drug Administration. That's very important for the medical equipment. As you mentioned, medical equipment, our bioengineering is part of FMS, and that's why all of the now we have MUMRA, which is Municipality of Rural Affairs and Municipality and Rural Affairs. Also have a requirement for buildings, for the parking, for things like that, which I'll come to it. And finally, we have the Al-Hay'a Al-Saudi Al-Muhandisin, the Saudi Engineering Council, the Saudi Council of Engineers, which is sets the requirement for the qualification within. So if you have any engineers, we need to see that these engineers are qualified from Saudi Engineering Council and so on. So if even technician now in Saudi Arabia have to be qualified from the Saudi Engineering Council. Now, the standard talks about PPM versus CM. Why standards? Why do we need PPM on the center? Why we need preventive maintenance? Why we don't do corrective maintenance? Why Sibahi is concerned about CPM, the PPM and corrective maintenance and maintenance? Why? Now, this is a requirement on this standard. Now, if you have preventive maintenance, if you have a lower preventive maintenance, it's very bad, you don't have a preventive maintenance, then you have higher corrective maintenance. And it was very well established, scientifically established, that you will have higher accidents because there is a correlation between corrective maintenance and accidents. So your aim, one of your aim or objective is to increase PPM, decrease CM, so you can decrease accident. So on the other hand, if we are increasing the PPM, increasing the preventive maintenance, we are lowering the corrective maintenance and we are lowering the accidents. So please, when the standard talks about PPM, we want to see, first you're doing a PPM program, preventive maintenance of all your equipment, air conditioning, generators if you have, elevators, power outlets, everything, autoclaves, the medical equipment, analyzers, the lab equipment, all of it, we need to see a PPM on it. Okay, and we need to measure how many PPM you do versus how many corrective maintenance. Corrective maintenance means something broke, somebody is calling and go and repair it. This is corrective maintenance. Preventive maintenance, you do a maintenance before it's breakdown. So this is the difference between them, and then you will have the accidents is correlated with corrective maintenance. The higher corrective maintenance you do, the higher accident, and vice versa. The lower corrective maintenance, that's a very, very important role. From cost-wise also, the corrective maintenance is preventive maintenance. And when you start it, it's costly. You can see it from here, it's costly. But with time, it goes down and lower. And the corrective maintenance cost on the other side, the cost will go down, and with time it will increase and escalate to the high points. So our optimum point here. So where is the optimum point? Let me tell you where is the optimum point. The optimum point, for example, do I have to do PPM on the light bulbs? Nobody do a PPM on the light bulbs. It doesn't measure 10,000 hours to go and change them. So this is the line. I will change the bulbs when they burn. Okay, so basically the PPM, there is a certain, and then you have to stop because the cost of PPM also, there's a cost for it. We need to have to reach this optimum point to make sure you are in the optimum from cost-wise also. How do we do a PPM? How do I do a PPM? The first thing to do a PPM, a proper PPM in your center, is you need to have PPM scheduling. What is PPM scheduling? Now, today we are on the November 19th. Today is 19th of November. So usually in November and December, we go and we do inventory of all the medical equipment, machinery, furniture, everything on the center. I go and I do inventory on it. Okay. And after I do the inventory, I write it down on the side here, all the equipment, generators, boilers, if I have air conditioning, panels, electrical panels, every piece of machine I have or equipment, even furniture, I put them in one side. Then I go back and see what's the requirement for doing a PPM maintenance on it. I have to go and read the manual. Now, if you have a contracted if you have a contract with the landlord or with the outside company, you need to sit down with them and you ask them what's the requirement, for example, to do a PPM on the autoclave, or the examination light, or even the cylinders. What's the PPM requirement for it? It doesn't need 5 years maintenance, it needs monthly maintenance, depends on the equipment. So you put the equipment on one side, and then you have, in the year, we have 52 weeks. So you divide the 52 weeks, okay, which is the weeks of the year for 2021, for example, and you put all of the weeks, and then from the manual, from the manufacturer manual of the equipment, or from the best practices, we also accept that, and you start putting all of these on the schedule. So now, plus if you have multiple equipment, you make sure you spread them in different weeks. You don't want all the weeks, because you don't want to lose all the equipment in the same week. So if I have sterilizers, for example, I have 3 sterilizers, and these sterilizers need quarterly maintenance. So I put them in different weeks. So every 3 months we do. So for example, sterilizers, I'll give you here water boilers. So for example, he has 2 water boilers. So see, we have put them in bi-monthly, means twice a month, with different weeks. So because we don't want both of them to have at the same time, then we will lose the service. We don't do that. The fire alarm system, if you have the fire alarm system, needs to be sprinkler system, also have to be on the PPM schedule. Please, this is very important. We go and check the PPM schedule for it. And then we document how much you did from the PPM on it. The standard, the standard talks about parking, 3.6 talking about the parking. Now, MUMRA, Ministry of Municipality and Rural Affairs, have established the standard here for the parking. 1 parking slot for every 100 square meter of PHS and ambulatory. 4 parking slots for each clinic, hospitals, 2.2, that's a requirement. 5% dedicated for handicapped or 2 numbers. And you are responsible for the parking, even if you don't own the building. You need to make sure the parking is enough for your patient, and this is a requirement for. Plus, for example, another thing is very important is you need to make sure that the ramps for the patient is there, and the ramp have to be, so what we call the 1 to 12 gradient, means every 12 meter I can increase 1 meter in height. So make sure that some people, they put it very steep. Some of them is there. So you need to make sure that it meets the requirement of the standard 1 to 12. So if every 12 meters, you can go up 1 meter from it. So that's for the ramps, the wheelchairs, to make sure that it is. So one of them is the requirement there. So now we talk about FMS4. The leaders develop and monitor the implementation of fire prevention program. Now this standards from the STEM standard talks about fire prevention. So that's the safety chapter or safety field of the 4 we talk about. Now he's saying at least annually, once a year, staff are trained to fire drills and evacuation plan. They need to make sure how to evacuate one plan. So please, this requirement, I want you to relate it. I want to go back, if you don't mind. Just want you to remind you what I talked about before. Yes, here. Here we talked about, we have 3 types of training. We need individual training, team training. Now, this standard is asking about the center all staff training. Now he's talking about the evacuation. So evacuation is a training. When you do evacuation, you need to train them first, then you will go implement. So the 4.1 is asking you for a complete center staff training. So this is, you need to relate it to the training we talked about in FMS 1. So he's asking you, you have to have an evacuation plan, how you want to do it and how the staff are trained on it. The 4.2 records of fire and evacuation training are kept in personal staff files. You need to know who participated in these drills. You need to have it in their file. We need to check who participated on which drill and how they achieve it. Egress routes, corridors, and fire escapes are marked and free from obstacles. This is very important in healthcare. Any healthcare facility should have easy evacuation. Evacuating a healthcare facility is very difficult. It's much more difficult than administrative or commercial or mercantile. It is very difficult one. So that's why we are emphasizing the egress route. Now, the Saudi Building Code and NFPA 101 codes, both of them the same, are asking for specific requirement of the. Now, this is very, I will show you some photos about some slides on that. Fire system, including fire alarm and fire equipment, are in place and functioning. Now, do I need sprinkler system? Depends on where are you in the building. So Saudi Building Code and the NFPA 101 require certain, if you are in multiple floors, and you need to have a fire compartmentation, you have to have a sprinkler system. However, if you are on one floor, on the ground floor, and you are only in the building, then the requirement of the sprinkler system depends on the fire compartmentation of your building. Extinguishers must be there in all buildings, so you need to see the extinguishers. I will give you examples now. The fire alarm is a must. This is a requirement from both Saudi Building Code and Sibahi. Is maintained and tested in all maintenance records. Again, we need to make sure that the fire alarm system is working and it's been documented, tested, maintained, and tested. And let's differentiate between these two. It has to be maintained, make sure the batteries, the cleaning, and all of that is there, and tested. You need to make sure all the detectors within 1 year is tested and working. Then the last one is the no smoking. We need to make sure that one of the smoking has two issues in the healthcare. First of all, it's a fire source, and the second is a health issue. So smoking is a big issue in healthcare. We don't allow it. So no smoking policy is approved and enforced. We need to see that the security is enforcing it. And again, you need a security in your ambulatory care center. And no smoking sign posted in all entrances and waiting area. And you need to make sure even somebody coming from outside, he knows that fact, that there is no smoking in your center. Now, when we talk about fire prevention, okay, we need always in fire safety, we talk about 4 levels. This is just for your general information, and I need you to just to make sure what we are. So the first level and the most important level is prevention. Okay, and I think you need to put all 90% of your effort in the prevention. And unfortunately, I see a lot of healthcare facilities, they concentrate in evacuation, suppression. They know you need to focus always on prevention. Okay, and this is the best. So now fire prevention in centers is comprised of 2 parts. First, engineering factors, that's the hard thing. And then the human factor, we call the soft behavior. So we have the hard and the soft. From the hard is the engineering, the building, the facility, the systems, and the soft is the human interaction, the documents, the processes. So this is the human, we call the soft side. So for the fire prevention, from the hard, you need to have a fire resistance and fire retardant material. You make sure your building is properly designed. And from the soft side, you have the anti-smoking culture, nobody allows smoking, and the wrong practices. Then we have detection. Why do we need detection if I have prevention? Detection is very important, and then it's next to prevention. Why? Because in detection, why we are emphasizing fire alarms? Because the first 3 minutes of any fire is the critical. The first 3 minutes of any fire, that depends if you can control the fire or the fire went out of control. If you can contain it or the fire will be out of control. So the detection, the fire alarm system, is the system. If you discover it earlier, you mean you can contain it. Now, all the fires we are seeing here in our daily, in our community, okay, these fires, they fail the detection. There is, I'm sure, 20 or 30 times of fires being suppressed or contained by the people inside the building before even calling the civil defense because of detection. They either smell it or hear the voice. So please, detection is very important to contain the fire in the first 3 minutes. So keep it in your mind. A detection system, you want to work in 3 minutes before they start. So all the system has to be ready and working. After the detection, if you fail to detect it, then we have the suppression. And the suppression, two types, either automatic, like a sprinkler system or clean agent systems, or the fire extinguisher, which needs a human interaction. That's why we are emphasizing on the race and pass. So in the detection, why we need race, rescue, alarm, contain, and extinguisher, that's a teamwork. Then we have the pass, which is on the suppression side, pull, aim, squeeze, and sweep. So that's in the second one, the suppression. You want to you want to put the fire off. And the last one is the evacuation. Evacuation in healthcare is always an issue, big issue, by the way. It's not easy to evacuate in health. That's why if you reach evacuation, means you failed on all the 3 stages before, which is not good, by the way. But however, if you do it, if you are in a multi-store building, if you're on the 3rd floor, 2nd floor, or your center has a multi-floor, you need to have compartmentation. What is compartmentation? قطاعات الحريق means the 2nd floor or 3rd floor have to be comprised of 2 spaces with a divider that the fire and smoke cannot go from one side to the other. Why we need that? Because if you want to evacuate, you can evacuate horizontally from one side to the other, and the fire will be contained on the first one. If your building, and let me stress it again here, if you are co-sharing, a building, if you are cohabitating with somebody, means your center or laboratory with other users, okay? You make sure that you are compartmentation fully on your center. You don't want, so why? Because healthcare is the highest, and as per Saudi building code, if you are co-sharing a building with other facilities, merchandise, residential, whatever, your standard is the highest and have to be implemented in the whole building, by the way. And one of them is compartmentation. You need to make sure your center is fully so if there is a fire on the residential area or in the shop, it will not come to you. You need to have full compartmentation and the fire prevention on your center. Now, fire alarm, there's basically 2 types of fire alarms. We have the addressable and conventional. Both are acceptable by the Saudi building code and the fire and the civil defense. Addressable means this is high tech. You can identify the fire in which rooms, and it can give you directly which room there. The conventional, the old system, basically goes by the loops. Then he can tell you there is a fire on the west wing or the right wing or the first floor. It's all tell you a general description. Also acceptable. There's no issue with it. And basically, the fire alarm, how it will work. Now, when we visit your hospital, your center, we need to check that the fire system is working. We check the fire alarm. There's no defects. There's no fault. There's no alarms. And the system is in a ready condition. Okay, addressable. So this is the one with only have the addressable means you can certainly know the room itself. By the way, the basic information also about the fire extinguisher types. We have 4 types. We have the water type, which is good for paper, and nobody's using the water anymore. By the way, water type, which is and this is the types, comes with the black sticker on it. It's good for the paper and wood fires. No, you cannot use it in electrical because water will conduct electricity, and it will not be good use for the liquid because the burning liquid will go up, and it's not also for gas. The second one is the foam. It's good for solids and liquids and no electrical. And the third one is the powder one, which is the most now usable, and it's a good one. You can use it for solids, liquid, gases, and electrical. So that's why it's widely used. Okay. And the last one is the carbon dioxide. is only used for electrical safe on most small fires. But please, you need to make sure the ratio is there. Most your extinguisher should be powder because that's the normal one. Now we use carbon dioxide only on critical electrical rooms, high equipment, MRI, CT. If you have X-ray machine, you will put one carbon dioxide only there. And by the way, carbon dioxide only be used on electrical fires if they are energized. If the equipment is energized, you can use carbon dioxide. If there is a fire and there's no power, you can use powder on it. There's no issue on it. This is the type of fire extinguisher. Now we talked about drills and training. We need to see evacuation drills. We need to see they are posted in the walls. Where is the evacuation? Don't forget, as a ambulatory care center, it's not about staff. Staff, they know the ins and outs of the center. The question is for the patient and visitors. They need to know. So you need to post the evacuation maps on the walls. You need to practice within your team the RACE, the rescue, alarm, contain, and extinguish. And then you need to also make sure, we need to see that in the files of the staff file. They've been trained on PASS and RACE, and they are well know how to use it. The standard talks about signage. This is the basic signage which we talked about. First of all, we need to have the emergency plan, as mentioned. We also focus on the exit signs and emergency signs. We need to see them, that's very clearly. There's no obstruction on it. Again, if you have fire doors, we need to see the fire doors, there is no obstruction. Properly located, not locked. Now, we need to differentiate between emergency doors and fire exits, okay? Emergency doors could be fire rated, it could be non-fire rated. Emergency exits only you want to evacuate from the building. Fire rated steel doors, we only use them on the compartmentation walls. So maybe, not all emergency doors have to be fire doors. Now for the fire doors, we use them also in electrical rooms. We use them in the staircases to protect that space, either from it or to it. So that's very important on it. Now, where do we put this? Is a very nice, came from Abdul Muhsin a few years ago. I think is one of the, it tells you where things are installed. Because you need to have the fire extinguisher on the right level. If you have the fire hose in the right level, the signage in the right, it means you can see it. There is line of sight and have to be illuminated. Also, if you have a floor type extinguisher, it needs to be clear. So that's the distances, and you can see the levels of it. FMS 5, the center is secured and protect the users. Now this is, so the center is secured. So the keyword here is security. So this standard is related to security. Trained security personnel are available in the center according to the size and design complexity. So it is a requirement now to have a security. Now, do I have 1, 2, 3, or 4? It depends on the size, but you need to have a security on the center. The center equipment and data are secured. You need to protect them. And if you need to have a CCTV, access control, all of that needs to be. The patient's privacy is respected. We do trust people here, but again, in Saudi Arabia, we have issue with the patient's privacy. We don't have this emphasis on the privacy. Before a few years, you can hear the nurses calling the names and things like that. Now we are moving toward to minimize that. We need to keep the patient's privacy, his documentation, his X-ray, all protected, not to be accessed from other patients or visitors. Security personnel, security restricted access to sensitive and high risk area. So you don't want people to go to inside the medical records or inside your computer to check the information of other patients. Again, why do we have this standard? Let's go back to the essence. This is what I want you to think always, why the standard is there. I will show you why the standard is there. The patient staff files are accessible only to authorized persons. Again, this is all security, all staff wear proper identification and badge. So you need to know who's working here or not working. You don't want somebody to tell you I'm working here, and you discover later he's not working or pestering. So all came from patient rights. So if you go back to Saudi Arabia, this is approved patient rights. The first one, knowledge of rights of patient, access to care. Now, number 3, comes under FMS, privacy and confidentiality. You see, this is, and number 4, all FMS. I mean, related to FMS. Privacy and confidentiality is a security issue. Protection and safety is patient rights, number 3 and 4, is protected by the FMS number 5 in the ambulatory care. So we need to understand that whatever we are putting a standard, this came from patient rights, which we need to emphasize to make sure it's being respected. Now, what is the security roles? This is he needs to know what he's doing. And this is really, you find a lot of hospitals, BHCs, ambulatory care, you have a security and you can tell him, what is your job here? He said, huh? He doesn't know his roles. So the first thing is you need to explain to his role. I think you need to explain to him patient rights, and then you need to explain to him what you need to do and how you want to protect him. All of that needs to be from the security roles. He knows who can come in, make sure the right people only access the place. So certain areas you don't want people to go, clean area or certain back offices, you don't want them to go inside it. He can enforce no smoking, okay? And try to always to hire non-smokers, because this is my advice with my full respect to people who smoke. And he has to be professional looking. He needs to have properly dressed and to respect. That's part of the general image of your center. ID badges is very important. Why? We need to differentiate. We need visitors and patients to differentiate from the people who work in your center from the people who doesn't work in your center. I know it's difficult. You work every day there, you know the people, you know them, but the patient and visitors, they don't know. So please, please, please make sure all your staff are wearing the badges of your center. And so it's not about you know each other, I'm sure you all of you, but I need to identify from outsiders. If we have visitors or patients, to know who they're talking to, the right people or not. Plus, if you tell them something, we need to tell them, Abdullah told me that. We need to identify them. Then we come to FMS 6. The leaders develop a plan for inspection, testing, and maintenance of medical equipment. So this standard is talking about medical equipment. Medical equipment now, with the new diagnosis and things, is a major source for the proper information to the medical staff to make decisions on it and your treatment plan. So you need to have a proper medical equipment. An updated inventory list is available for all medical equipment. So what's the standard requirement? You need to know all your medical equipment, how many you have and where are they. So when we say updated inventory list, you need to, the ambulatory center or your center, he needs to tell me, I have 600 pieces of equipment, 300, 200, whatever, and we have oximeter, I have sterilizers, I have examination table, operation table, all of that in detail. He knows all of them. He doesn't go and look at them, he knows how many and where are they. We need to stress, medical equipment is very important. Medical equipment with a special installation requirement, HVAC, or room modification installed following the manufacturer recommendation and safety equipment. Again, it's not about the right equipment in the right place under the right conditions. The right equipment in the right place under the right conditions. So we need to make sure this medical equipment, X-ray, any lab machinery, they have the right equipment, maintained right, on the right place, with the right spaces, with the right conditions, air conditioning, water supply, and power supply coming to them all on the right one. So that's a very important standard. The periodical preventive maintenance, again, he's talking about PPM. We talked about PPM in general. Now he's talking about the PPM on the medical equipment. Is implemented for all medical equipment according to the supplied and available manufacturer sales manual and record and maintained. So, by the way, with our knowledge in Sibahi, we know what's usually the medical equipment requirement for maintenance. We want to check and we make sure that the tags and you see in 4.6.4, the medical equipment is tagged with PPM label. We need to have a labels on the PPM on them. So you know that. Now, let's understand that, okay? When you write your policies, you need to say no untagged medical equipment to be used. Please use this sentence, okay? No untagged medical equipment to be used. So why we are asking, we don't want anybody to bring a machinery or something and he used it without having a proper tagging, which is its inventory, it belongs to your center, and it has a PPM. So if something is expired, I want you to tell to the nurses with the policy, it's not to be used. So if something happened and somebody died, we know it is being written well that you should not be using it. And trust me, it is important. All defective medical equipment is labeled. So you need to have inventory tag on them, that's they are belonging to your center. You have to have a PPM that's been serviced and when is the next service. And the third one, you need to have defective ones. If you discover one is malfunction, it's not working properly, you need to put a tag out of order. So the next nurse or the next staff, you cannot reuse it again. So please, when you discover it, and it needs to be written in your policy, any defective medical equipment need to be tagged immediately. And nobody should use any defective materials tagged. Medical equipment is discontinued to working to clear policy, including lifespan beyond economical and vendor government recalls. Equipment is disposed. So if you have equipment which is discontinued or you don't rejected or obsolete, you make sure it is removed from your center. Now, this is always, I say, this is a very important, the life cycle of the medical equipment. This is the life cycle of the medical equipment. Whenever you have a medical equipment coming to your center, make sure the bioengineering, either in-house or from your contractor, is checking them and do a pre-checking on it. I don't rely on the manufacturers. When it's reached to you, to Saudi Arabia, after shipping and somebody has to do a pre-issue check on it. So we don't rely on the manufacturer. When it's arrived to the location, somebody you have to check. Even if the agent you need to check it. And he said, yes, it is on the right. Because after 3 months or 4 months of shipping and sitting in the warehouse, you need somebody to make sure after it's arrived to your center, it's been checked. Then it goes to the user, he can use it. Through the lifespan of the medical equipment, it goes to the workshops or the vendors and goes back under. You need everything to be documented. And please, tracking system. When we visit you from Sibahi, we need to see you have a record that this oximeter, this analyzer, or this machine, centrifuge, any one of them is being maintained so and so, the PPM. And if there was any corrective maintenance and sent to the workshop, you need to be documented on the file of that medical equipment. Then if it's going to be rejected, it's gone and removed there. So this is the life cycle of the medical equipment. It's very important to understand it and make sure you are monitoring and registering all the lifetime and the movement of the medical equipment within the center. So this is a tagging. You can see the tagging here. So the tagging is the dates and who did the date and what's the next testing for it. We need to see that. And then very important is the electrical analyzer and the medical equipment. So basically, we need to make sure that the medical equipment is electrically safe. So there is something called electrical analyzer. If you are a big center, you need to have it and make sure you're checking that. If you are a small center and you are using outside services, you can go ahead and contracted one. And we have a special standard for contracting. If you contract somebody, doesn't mean it's not your responsibility. No, it is still your responsibility, by the way. You have to make sure that the one you are contracting, a company or a provider, is following the requirement of the Saudi FDA and the CBAH. And the signage, if there is something wrong or not working, you need to have it, the warning is there. Now we come to the PPM and we do the engineering. One of the standards, if you remember, is talking about you doing a proper PPM. So air conditioning, this is a very big issue on the military centers. You need to make sure you are complying with this. This is from ASHRAE, American Society of Heating. It's a requirement. We're using it. However, we don't, in CBAH, we don't say only ASHRAE. If you are following any other standard, you need to tell us which standard you are following, but you need to follow a standard. When you do the filter changes, when you do all the maintenance, you need to make sure all are followed with engineering. This is an example of ASHRAE for hospitals and healthcare. For example, for examination room here, they tell you it doesn't have to be positive or negative, okay? However, you need to have 2 minimum air changes. You have to have 2 minimum air changes from outside. So you have to have 2 air changes per hour from fresh air. So what this says now is you cannot use split unit. You cannot use window AC unit because you need 2 air changes per hour from outside. Means you have to have an inside air. If you're going to use a split unit, means still you have to have an air intake from outside to the room to make sure that this is met. The air changes within the room have to be 6 times. So we need to calculate from your air handling unit or your conditioning how many air changes happens in each hour. So you need 6 air changes. So we have 8 air changes, 2 fresh and 6 recirculating. Why he's asking for recirculating air, the air changes, the more you do air changes, the less settlement of bacteria and germs will be on the surfaces. The higher air changes in any room, the higher air changes, the minimum settlement will have on the surfaces within the room. That's why we emphasize. And you can see in the theater, in the operating theaters here, you see the number goes to 20 and 25 air changes. Okay. However, in the examination rooms, only 6. So because of the high level of OR, we're giving it higher. That's not us, that's the ASHRAE. Also, it specifies the humidity within the examination room. Still, this is to be applicable, and you need to have from 40 to 60 or 40 to 50 humidity within the room itself. You are in Riyadh, for example, this is very difficult to achieve. If you are in Jeddah or Dammam, it's very easy, but still you need to make sure the humidity is there. We come now to FMS 7. FMS 7 is the leaders develop an emergency plan and staff are trained on it. The center emergency plan details how to respond to different emergencies and how to minimize risk in the center. Now, this is very important. Each center is different because you are in a different location of the town, at different level, you are serving different communities. So please make sure the plans you are making fit your condition and your environment. It's not about cut and paste. You need to make sure. If I am on ambulatory services and I am on the highway, means I will have more coming to me from the accidents from the way. If I am in a poor area, then there is issues with the type of people I'm visiting, and there is maybe physical. So please make sure that your emergency plans is fit to your center. The emergency plans defines the staff roles. We need to know everybody what is his role in the emergency plan. If there's a fire, if there is something happen, we need to make sure they are coherent. What do we mean by coherent? Okay, في تناغم بالعمل ما بينهم. There is coherent work between them. Staff are trained in emergency drills annually. So again, every year they need it. Staff are certified in completing the emergency drills. They have certification, they did the emergency drill. The emergency plan includes contact persons and authorities. So in your emergency plan, if you have any incident, are you going to call the police, the civil defense, the Red Crescent? You need to identify it and who will call them. We always see confusion. Whenever you have emergency confusion, how do you get rid of this confusion? Again, let's go back to what we said in the beginning. You need to understand why the standard here. The standard here, he wants to say, if we had an emergency, we don't want confusion. We want everybody knows his roles and how do you need to have it written on the plans, trained on the drills, and la samahallah, if happened, people will follow what is written in the train. So please, this is a very important. The emergency plan identifies the nearest healthcare facility and staff, where to refer the patient during emergency. If we need to close for any reason, okay, it is your responsibility to defer your patients. Where you want to defer them, it is your responsibility and have to be written. And we need, when we visit you, Sibahi, we don't want the patient, he doesn't know, he comes to you and you find you closed for any reason, and he doesn't know. You need to have a system of deferring the patient, or if you have an emergency, where you will take the patient also. The center has alternative power and water sources as part of the emergency preparedness. Make sure you have, so now the requirement here is you have alternative power. So either through a generator or through another source. And the water supply also from 2 sources. So that's important. I will come to that. The emergency plan is documented, evaluated annually. So he's needing you to make sure it's written. So what are we talking about? This is a very basic for the emergency planning. You need to have preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation. Okay, this is the basic phases of disaster management plan. We need to read that. You are prepared, you have a response, and recovery and mitigation. How, if there is any issue, how you mitigate it, how you lower the income from that dangerous. We have now general in healthcare, I'm not talking about the military, we have internal disaster and external disaster. What do we mean by internal disaster? Internal disaster means something happened to your center, a fire, a flood, any reason, and you need to evacuate your ambulatory care. You do evacuation and then you would transfer. So we need to know how you want to evacuate and where you want to transfer them. So this is, we need to have, you have an agreement, MOU with the different centers, that if I have my center for any reason start working, if I lose power, for example, very simple is you lose power and you cannot provide service. So how do we make sure continuity of service? We transfer them to our program. So we need to see the evacuation and transfer. Another word we use in healthcare is the external disaster. And the external disaster is something happened outside, and you are expecting influx of casualties. So if you are a center, a military care center on the highway, and there was a bus rolling or turnover of a bus, and you're getting 30 patients in your center, you are the nearest one. So what will happen? We need to have an external disaster, how you can cope, how you identify the cases, which cases you will treat, which cases you will defer. All of that, we need to have it written, and the people in your team knows exactly what's happening, and you have drills on it. So this is the internal and external disasters. Saudi Arabia now, for your information, is the first country in the world who unified the healthcare emergency codes. Saudi Arabia is the first country in the world to unify the healthcare emergency codes. Now there are 12, okay? And believe it or not, out of the 12 emergency codes in healthcare, 9 is FMS. Please understand this fact. Saudi Arabia has unified the emergency codes. Out of the 12, 9 are related to this chapter. 9 are related to FMS. So if we take these 12, fire is FMS, bomb threat is FMS. This is generally for hospitals, but it's also applicable on health center. We need you to know that there is codes. How do you have the codes? But I'm just giving you how if you have a utility failure, it's also FMS. chemical spills is FMS, all of that. Only the blue code, I think, and this is one of the codes and trauma team. This is codes is medical codes, but all of the 12 of them 9 is FMS. FMS 8 is the leaders develop a hazardous material, hazmat, and waste disposal plan. So the leaders keep an updated register for hazardous material center along with their safety data sheet. And I will give you a complete discussion on the slides on the hazardous material, how to identify them. This is a very major. This is alone needs a 2-hour session for the hazardous material identification and things. But I'm sorry, we have only 2 hours for the whole FMS. The staff are trained in dealing with available hazardous material and waste disposal. So your staff is trained to work with them. Hazardous material and waste are controlled. The center exerts a continuous effort to reduce hazardous material. This is very important. Your center needs to know at all time how much hazardous material in the center. How many kgs, how many cylinders, how many, all of it, how many liters. The center needs always to know how many hazardous material in the center, how the staff, and you need to show us, the center needs to show Sibahi, how you are working to reduce this hazardous material. If I have a hazardous material in my house, I'm always afraid that my children will touch it or will eat it, will drink it or whatever. What about the center? It's more important than my house. The center, because many people are coming and going all the time. So the danger is much higher than in your house. That's why we are emphasizing. So go back to the essence of Sibahi standards, safety and quality. Why we need that stand? To prevent any misuse of hazardous material or spill of hazardous material. So all of that needs to be addressed. So I'd like to stress again, hazardous material and waste, believe it or not, medical waste is part of hazmat. Medical waste is part of the hazmat. Medical waste is part of the hazardous material. I know in Saudi Arabia, we have usually we talk about 2 plans, the hazardous material plan and waste, but in the international arena, always the medical waste comes under the hazardous material. The hazardous material disposal is done with an effective manner with facility through the authorized contractor. You don't just dump it, you need to make sure how much you give it. And now Saudi Arabia has, I think, 3 or 4 contractors who works on this field. Fire-rated cabinets are used for flammable hazardous material. You need to have the right cabinet to use it for the fire hazardous. Again, let me emphasize on this one now. Now what you're saying, if you are receiving a hazardous material, مواد خطرة, you need to have 2 operations, transportation and handling. You make sure when you receive them, you have the right. Then it goes to the user department, the lab or the X-ray or whatever, and you make sure there's for the handling, the storage, the utilization, the usage, and disposal is done within the right of that department. If the department is moving them to the waste, again, you have to make sure that the handling and transportation is being done. But the main thing here is you need to have registry. You need to show us that you know all the time how many hazardous material you have in your center, where are they and who's responsible on it, and how much the minimum and maximum quantity you are keeping. Alcohol, thinner for painting, all of that, we usually look for it. Oil, diesel, oxygen, carbon dioxide, all gases, by the way, for your information. Let me go back to this one. This is the NFPA, we call it Diamond, very famous. It tells you how do you identify them. Now you do identify them on 3, either from health, flammability, and reactivity. So if you have 0, it's less health harmful. If it's 4, it's very dangerous to the health. Again, right one is flammability. 0 will not burn. 4 is extremely flammable. And then reactivity, 0 is normally stable. 4 is very unstable. So, and the last one here is how do you work with it? For example, W with the line means you don't put water on it. Some chemicals you don't put water on it. That's the requirement. Now, this is an example of methanol, one of the liquids which you use. It will give you, so from what I see here, directly I can tell you this is a fire hazard. It has no reactivity. It has one health hazard. Here, what worries me is number, and he will tell you what's the treatment. Now, Saudi Arabia is also using something new called the GHS, Globally Harmonized System. I need, if you have time, to read about it. A few years ago, the United Nations, UN, adopted something called the GHS because they saw if something came from Australia is different from what coming from US, different from Europe, different from the Middle East. So all of these, they try to align it. So they came up with the GHS, which I recommend you use both in identification and in the hazard level, called the Globally Harmonized System. It's by UN adopted, and United States also adopting it. Okay, so for example, acetone here is dangerous, so it give you the two inflammable. It also comes with, before we use material safety data sheet, MSDS, now we are only using SDS. This is an example of one of the SDS, safety data sheet. It tells you the 16 part of it, the health. So if you want, you can go directly and read about it. It's very important for you if you start learning about GHS and how you identify them. Now we come to FMS 9, the last one in the FMS. The leaders develop a policy and procedure for the safe use of various types of compressed gas. Now in the centers, you have two solutions. Either you are using piped medical gases or you are using cylinders. In both cases, we in CBAH want to see that you are utilizing, and making sure that the medical gas is being used. Medical gas is dangerous if you are misusing it with the patient. Medical gas is dangerous on a fire site. So all of these makes us worry on the medical gases. Even cylinders can explode. It's like a rocket. If you see some videos on the YouTube, if you break the nozzle of the cylinder, it will be just like a rocket. So all of these makes us very worried about the medical gases in the centers. So what he's saying here, the leader's policy and procedure for safe use of various types of compressed. The document highlights the use of cylinders, so it's asking you for a policy and procedure for it. How do you transport it? The document emphasizes the cylinder storage in well-ventilated area, because it's been discovered always if you put them in a closed area, they will build pressure and could explode. That's why we need well vented. The document describes how to secure the cylinder by positioning it upright against the wall and securing in chain inside. If you have cylinders, you need to have them upright, chained, because always the nozzle, if they fail and break, it will be like a bracket. And again, also, if it's fail, it's very heavy and it hits your leg or your foot, it's also an incident. That's why we want to prevent it. That's why we are insisting always, whenever you have cylinders, they have to be secured and chained. The document ensures the timely replacement of empty cylinders and availability of a backup system. If you are using cylinders, we don't want the nurse and the ER asking for the cylinders, and then the administrator said, oh, sorry, we have no oxygen. No, we can't do that. You have to make sure you have a backup and you are filling it on a timely manner. This is what we want, so that's what we want to check, and it's documented. When we come to you, we want to see that it is available there. The center equipped with biomedical gas system follow the regulatory body testing and safety report. If your center is big and you are using pipe medical, means there is piping on it, you need to do it. So here are some issues. See, this is bad transportation. There is no chaining on the wall. So this is cylinder safety. For the medical gases, piped medical gases, usually there's 4 gases on the piped ones. We have the oxygen, okay, and the oxygen either comes from the cylinders, from liquid oxygen if it's big, or sometimes comes from the BSA, which is basically concentrator, oxygen concentrator, takes from the air and concentrated. They are used now widely, and they have the medical air either again from cylinders coming or from the compressors. They take the air from the compressor, and then you have to have a dryer, and then you supplying it to the patient. We need to see that properly. You use HTM or Health Technical Memorandum, or you use NFPA 99. Both of them address the safety of the medical gas. Vacuum also, we have a vacuum pumps which sucks the suction and send it to the centralized. And the last one is the nitrous oxide we usually use for analgesia and for dental, and it's all based on cylinders. We need to see that all of them are working together. So now we finished the first part, which is the FMS, Facility Management and Safety. Now we have 3 standards related to radiology. I don't know, do you want us to take questions, or you want to complete the 3 standards and then take because we have 30 minutes now. I think we'll finish the radiology because it's 3 standards with basic information. Then I will open the end of that session for the Q&A, question and answer for everybody if he has questions. In the radiology services, we have 3 standards. And before I go and explain the standards, we need to differentiate. And when we say radiology, we are talking about not only the X-ray machines. We're talking about the X-ray machine and any machine who emit radiation. Could be a laser, could be any other machine. So our concern in Sibahi not only about X-ray machine, anything can emit means sends radiation. When you need to make sure it is safe and shielded and things. So basically, there's 2 types of radiation: ionizing radiation and non-ionizing radiation. I need you to know about this basic information. Ionizing radiation that has sufficient energy to remove orbital electrons, okay, and that's dangerous. And non-ionization, the radiation that does not have sufficient energy to remove orbital electrons, may cause excitation. So we are worried with ionizing radiation because it has more harmful effect. Another very important principle in radiology is ALARA. ALARA we use as low as responsibly achievable. Okay, so we always try to minimize. What we are trying to minimize, we are trying to minimize 3 things, which will come to it: the time, the shielding, and the distance. We will come on that. But after we finish the first FMS, the first RD1, radiology services are available or planned with other institutions to meet patient needs and accordance with applicable national standards, laws, and regulations. When a radiology service are provided through a contract, the center is responsible for providing oversight of the contractors. If you sign a contract with any radiology center, it doesn't mean it is their responsibility. No, still it is your responsibility. Still it's your patient. You are responsible. I'm not telling the responsibility to all the details, but you need to have some mechanism or systems to show us in Sibahi that you are monitoring that center, that the center is adhering to Sibahi standards, from the radiation, from the safety, from fire prevention, from all the readings. You need to show. So you need to have some kind of mechanism. You are monitoring the people you're contracting through visits and things. So we'll come that. And then the requirements set here. If you have your own radiology, a licensed technology technician carries out radiology services. So this is a requirement, is if you run your own, or even if you contracted outside, make sure that a licensed technician so the license is either from Saudi Specialty Authority, Healthcare Specialty Authority, or from the KSAT if it's working with a different, from King Abdullah Sustainable Energy. Then the radiology services are supervised by, at minimum, a radiologist specialist. So this is the second requirement is there. So if the technician who do the operation itself, the work itself have to be licensed, and you have to be supervised by a radiology specialist with who reads, reviews, and authorized radiology reports. So make sure the output of that is acceptable. The RD number 2, the radiology, that center has a radiation safety program. Okay, so we need to have a radiation safety program. The program covers all areas, the use of ionizing radiation because it's a dangerous one. Okay, so all rooms where ionizing radiation is administered and tested and certified radiation leak proof by appropriate certifying local authority. What he's saying here, if you have a radiation, ionization radiation, you need to have the room shielded. Means you have to have a certification that we are putting in the room is certified and can protect from the people outside the room. Safety warning signs are posted on the doors in a clear and appropriate location. You need to have it, so if there's a pregnant or all of them needs to know that there is a radiation here. You need to inform them, to the people, even visitors. Prior to X-ray test, women in the children bearing period with missed administration or are checked for a possibility of pregnancy. Make sure that you check for pregnancy and possibility of pregnancy. So all of this you need to be asked, and you have to make sure that you don't expose a pregnant woman to X-ray unless it's been approved by the medical staff. Personnel are monitored for radiation exposure by thermometers, dosimeters that are regularly checked. So as you know, all the radiology has to have the TLD on them. And this TLD every 3 months sent to the labs. The reading is taken. You don't want overexposure. We need not only to protect the patient and the visitors, we also want to protect the staff. Okay, even if you are working there, still we need to show us that the staff are protected. Through the TLD, you have to have 2 TLD, A and B, one for 3 months, and if you send the second one, you have to have the first one with you, so you have to have each staff working in the X-ray have to have 2. Then we have all types of radiation protection aprons are periodically inspected and tested for integrity and effectiveness of documentation. We need you to check the aprons, the gland, and all of the protection tested. It's very easy. If you have fluoroscopy, you put it under the fluoroscopy, and if there is any holes or things, you can see it. You can do it from if you have the fluoroscopy. If not, you need to have contract with an outside vendor or a clinic or somebody who can do the test for you and give you certification that the test is there. Again, let's go back to the radiation basics. There's 3 factors we always need to talk about: time, shielding, and distance. So we need to minimize the time you are exposed. We need to make sure the shielding is working, especially for the outside and the protection. And always the distance is being enough, because the nearer you have, the higher radiation. How do we minimize the radiation exposure? Less time, higher shielding, and more distance. So this is what we are trying to achieve. This is basically one of the laser rooms. That's a very nice layout, just to tell you the perfect room. Let's go from the back, from outside. You have a warning sign. You can see the warning sign in the outside door that there is a laser machine. If you have a laser machine, there is access control. We don't want anybody to go inside, either locked or with access control to laser area. And warning light. A warning light will go on if the machine is on. So the sign is general. The warning light is during the usage only. Then we have the laser curtains. You don't want someone accidentally to go inside. And storage of eyewear protection. So if somebody, the nurse or the doctor or the patient, he has to have the goggles for the protection. The machine itself has to have warning labels on the equipment. We need to read how much the wavelength of the machine, and we always check, by the way, the wavelength, and it meets the goggles, the eyeglass goggles, and they are all of them serving the same wavelength. Okay, also recommended to have interlock to laser or shutter. So if you are using the laser, the door will not open. That interlock is good. And the last thing is we need to see also as a fire extinguisher. All of these makes a laser the perfect room as a requirement, and how we can protect it. There's no shielding requirement for the X-ray room, by the way. Plus, I think you don't use any reflection material on the room, by the way. Please make sure there is no mirrors or any reflection stainless steel on the room, because you don't want any accidental X-ray laser reflection. And the last but not the least is there is an implemented process to keep radiology equipment in safe, functional condition. An operation and service manual is available for equipment. I think this is very basic. If somebody wants to work the machine, he has to have the manual. And if there is a technician, he has to have the equipment manual. So all of that, that's the basic information. If you are asking a nurse what this button for, and she needs to have read about it, how to do it. Qualified person maintain the equipment. We need you to show us that the proper people, not anybody can maintain. They are very specialized equipment, that the qualified people, personnel are there. Maintenance and repair records are properly maintained, including corrective action. This is with all medical equipment. But more emphasized now on the laser and the X-ray machines, we need to make sure that the maintenance records are there. For example, I will tell you one major issue we face on the healthcare is sometimes the radiology team get acquaintance with the vendor or the supplier, and they start calling them directly without going to the bioengineering or the proper channels. This is very bad, by the way. All the maintenance on your center goes through the bioengineering, if you have a bioengineering, or the bio who's in charge of the maintenance, so he can keep a proper record of it. Radiology people, they should inform him or go through him for all the calls or maintenance of the X-ray machines and the laser machines. Equipment is periodically inspected and calibrated for proper functioning. So the manufacturer usually tells you need to do a 1 year or 2 year or 3 year calibration. Medical equipment also very important calibration. This is not only the medical equipment and laser, it also cover all the medical. You have to adhere, stick to the recommendation of the manufacturer. If he said 1 year calibration, you need to do a calibration every year, and we need to see that. The most important piece of equipment which needs calibration is the electrical safety analyzer. This is, by the way, if you have the electrical safety analyzer, if you have one and you are a big center, and the electrical safety analyzer not calibrated, means all the equipment in your center is not calibrated, because that's one you use for calibration of everything. So please make sure, the most important is the electrical analyzer calibration, all medical calibration, including the IVs and things like that, the pumps, if you have, need to be very well calibrated. If you have a minor OR or things, make sure everything is calibrated and the medical equipment, and according to the